Join me today as I paint the highly anticipated 20mm AB Figures US Paratroopers. I found myself rewatching the iconic TV series Band of Brothers for some much needed inspiration, and I hope that I've done these models justice, especially with the anniversary of D-Day just around the corner. These miniatures are absolutely fantastic and are crammed full of detail. If you haven't checked them out yet, definitely have a look at their website. You'll find a link to their website in the video description. Huge thank you goes to Nick and the team at Eureka for sending me these samples. They are absolutely superb. Let me know below how you found this tutorial and if you're going to be using it. So today we are going to paint up some of the highly anticipated 20mm World War II US Airborne from AB Miniatures. Now AB are arguably the best 20mm World War II miniature manufacturers, if not the best World War II in any scale, in my opinion. Very difficult to say with other scales, but in terms of 20mm, I think they are definitely the best, at least in my opinion, as I said. So these are the new US Airborne that have come out, and they come out currently in 3 packs. So you've got your advancing as in standing, then you've got your prone and crouching troops, and then as well as your support elements. So they've got machine guns, mortars, and some command stands. So these are lovely sculpts, and we're going to look at those in a bit more detail whilst I paint one of them. But if you're unfamiliar as to where you need to go to source these, you can go to AB Figures website. Now they have a huge range of World War II miniatures, but for these you want to go to the United States, go to infantry. They are on the second page, but you can also increase the amount of figures that are shown on the site to 75. You scroll somewhere towards the bottom and you can see that we've got the US Paras advancing and then everything else there. So if you want to add those to your cart, the prices are really reasonable, so I'd highly recommend checking those out. Now I'm going to paint mine based off Band of Brothers. So I'm going to try and go with the Band of Brothers colours. Now the colours that they used in this particular series was a little bit darker, and they had obviously some sort of filter on there, but I really want to try and capture that in the way I paint my models. So we're going to go for like a darker uniform, but try and make those edges pop a little bit more, as you can see in Lipton's uniform there. And then here's a better shot of that uniform that I'm really going to try and emphasize on. So let me know at the end if you think I've captured it. So to start off with, I'm going to prime my model with Tamiya Surface Primer Light Grey. I like light grey because it just makes those lighter colors pop, but you don't have to go with light grey. You can go with whatever primer you prefer. To start off with, I'm using US Field Drab, which is part of the Vallejo range. Now most of the paints, if not 99% of the paints that you're going to see in this tutorial are from Vallejo. Vallejo is probably one of the more common paint companies out there, or paint manufacturing companies out there, so this should be easily accessible. But this is the paint we're going to go for with the uniform. It's quite dark, but we are going to brighten that up a touch later on. Now for the webbing, I'm going to use khaki. Khaki and US Field Drab together are obviously two colours that look somewhat similar, but you can easily differentiate the two later on with various layering, as well as some real subtle highlights with some lighter colours, which I'll show you in a bit. Also, I'm going to paint the rifle strap in khaki as well. Now for the boots and chin strap and pistol, I'm going to use saddle brown. So when I say pistol, I mean the pistol holster, obviously. Saddle brown is a really good colour for a reddish leather look. It's not too red where it looks really unrealistic. I'm sorry if you can hear that dog barking in the background, but it's a really good in between a red and a brown. So I really go with this for this sort of colour. Then for the helmet, I'm going to use US Dark Green. Now if you had a grenade or a torch, I'd be using US Dark Green as well. Also, I believe the Pathfinders had like a signalling gun. I don't know what the actual term of it is. I'd be painting that in green, same as the bazookas and the 30 cal stands, mortars. I mean, you get the gist really, but anything like that. He's also got a scarf, which was quite common with paratroopers, not just the Americans but also the British. I'm going to paint that in the same colour. Now for the scrim on the actual helmet, I'm going to go with old wood. This is just my go-to when I'm painting scrim. I go with old wood. You can paint green if you really want to try and paint like a mixture of green and browns and drabs on those bits of scrim, but I think old wood works really nicely for what we're going to try and achieve on this particular model. Now for the rifle, we go with flat earth. This is just my typical wooden recipe. So if you're familiar with the channel, you're probably gonna be like, oh god, he's going on about flat earth again and this combination. But if you're not familiar with the channel, this is what I do for my wood. Everyone's wood recipe is different. Some people like a really grainy wood, some people like a dark wood, some people like a bright wood. Go with whatever you really want to go with, but you might find what I do is something that you like. I also paint the bayonet handle in the same colour as well. Now for the metal, I'm using black grey. So that's the metal on the rifle, the metal on the rifle straps, and any other metal items that you might be able to differentiate on the model, or bits of equipment that he might also have. As well with Americans, these boots that they've got, the actual bottom of the boot was black, so you could paint that, but because I'm going to be putting mud and grass and all that stuff on the bottom of these and his foot isn't lifted, there's really no need for that on this model. I'm also painting his bayonet in this colour as well. And then for his extra ammo pouches that are slung around his side, I'm using brown violet or US olive drab, which is the colour that I believe was used. It's the sort of colour of the M43 uniform, so this is what I'm going for with this. It really helps break up the khaki as well, so not everything's painted in bloody khaki, which obviously helps for these particular bits of equipment to stand out. And then there's just some areas that there's nothing there, like there would be a gap ordinarily, but because of the model and the fact it's metal, there's a bit of excess metal there that you just can't get rid of. I paint that in German camo black brown and then just forget about it once it's done, because it will be pretty well hidden. Then for my wash, I go with Nor oil and a technical medium at a 1:1 ratio. So I actually mix the two in this one pot. So I've just got a pot ready to go. I can just shake it up and then apply it straight to my model. The way I best describe this wash is it's a mixture between a wash and a glaze. So it's somewhere in the middle. So in those really deep recesses, you get a really big buildup of black paint, but on the outer edges and on the flat surfaces, it doesn't really make it too dark, as you can see in this comparison shot here. If that was straight Nor oil, that would be super black and dark, which you really don't want. It's a lot more work. Now we want to start with the first layer, and the format's going to be the same with all of these. So we're going with US Field Drab again. So we're going to go through with the original colours, and hopefully you can see with my dodgy camera work what I'm trying to do here. I'm basically painting up everything again in the same colour, but I'm leaving in that darker colour from the wash in the recesses and in the creases and the folds of any of his uniform. Now we go with US Field Drab and Iraqi Sand at a 2:1 ratio. So we make sure we've got a bit more US Field Drab than we do Iraqi Sand. Now we're building up that brighter colour, and this is the second layer before the final highlight. You can just do this, you don't need to do a final highlight. If you're in a rush, you want to batch paint a lot of these, don't go on to the next step. You can just leave it here, but I've always find that the final highlight really does make it work. And hopefully you can see what I'm doing. I'm just building it up, so I'm not painting everything in this colour. I'm starting to pick out the details and, you know, the bits that are flat and all of that, but anything that's bent and creased, and I'm just leaving that now, unless the crease is obviously higher. Then for the final highlight, I use US Field Drab and Iraqi Sand at a 1:1 ratio, so it's equal parts now. Just a blob of each right next to each other, make sure they're about even, mix them together, and then there you go, there's your final highlight. And now straight away you can see that that uniform is starting to pop on the bottom of his jacket. So this is a really good colour for this. You don't need to use Iraqi sand. You can use German camo beige World War II. You can use buff. You can mix it up. The uniforms weren't all exactly the same color. They all were faded differently. So definitely feel free to experiment with different colors. And if you're eagle-eyed, you might be able to see that I actually experimented with German camo beige World War II with one of my miniatures. You might have seen on social media, etc. Now we've got the uniform done, which is the hardest part. We can now move on to the rifle and the wooden items. So I'll go with flat earth again, and with wood and rifles especially, I really like to just almost scratch in the paint. So I'm trying to simulate wood grains when I'm doing this. I know wood grains 20mm, why? But it works. It really works. I maybe not to you, but to me it really does work. So try and do it. You might be surprised. And then just do the same with the bayonet. Now we use flat earth and orange brown at a 1:1 ratio. So now we're really starting to brighten that flat earth up, give it a bit more of a brighter texture. So exactly the same principle, nothing changes here, probably just a little less amount of scratches, but you can see I'm just scratching in those wood grains. And if you want to know what brush I use, I'll make sure I leave it in the description of the video from now on. I've also got a video on brushes as well that you might find interesting. Now I'm just highlighting the bayonet, the handle of the bayonet, and I'm just adding in lines where the grip would be. That's pretty much it, really. And then the final highlight for the wood is orange brown. So this colour is really bright, so you don't want to overload your tip. You just want to put a very minute amount of paint on that tip, scratch it in, and just keep scratching away, scratch until you're happy. Don't overload with paint, because you're going to put a blob on there and you're going to go, oh my god, this just looks so silly. You've got a big bright orange patch on your gun. If you do little tiny scratches, you're going to be laughing. Once we've got the rifle done, in terms of the wood, we can now move on to the metal. So exactly the same principle, picking out everything in black grey, but leaving that darker black grey in the recesses. So we can pick out all the bits of the rifle, as well as the bayonet. And obviously if you had the boots and the bottom of the boots showing, you could also do that as well. Binoculars and all of that sort of fun stuff you could do. Then for the highlight, I'm going with black grey and basalt grey. I'm doing that at a 1:1 ratio. So somewhere in between of like a grey and a black, obviously. And I'm just picking out all the details and just adding a little line here and a little line there. If I can see the iron sight, just put a little bit on the top of the iron sight. All the bits of metal that make up the M1 Garand, I'm trying to just really differentiate those with this highlight as well. Now you can leave it there, you really can leave it there, but if you want to be even more cheeky, you can do a very, very, very subtle dry brush of base lead belcher, or any silver that you've got in your inventory, and just a very small dry brush. Don't use your good brush because you don't want to damage the tip, but use a fine brush and just slowly work it in. If it takes you 5 attempts, it takes you 5 attempts, but trust me, just do it slowly. It will start picking out the edges and you'll be laughing. You'll be laughing a lot apparently in this video. Then for the netting of the helmet, I'm using German camo beige World War II, and I'm using the exact same principle I used on the metal with the silver. I'm just putting a little bit on my brush and dry brushing it on and just working it in until I'm happy. Then for the scrim, I'm going over it with old wood, trying to break up each bit of scrim so it looks like there's little indentations in there. Maybe the scrim's broken apart, even though it looks intact. Maybe it's just got a little break in between two bits, just trying to make it not just a big blob of old wood. And then following that same sort of principle, I use Iraqi sand, and you can see I'm just adding in dots, maybe a longer line or dot here and then a smaller dot there, just to break it up as scrim would be. It would be all different sizes, different chunks, different areas of the helmet. So whatever you can see, try and break it up to make it really pop a bit more. Now for that extra bit of equipment for his, extra ammo pouches, I'm going to go with brown violet again, or US drab. I think it was US field drab, that's it. And I'm just, this is perfect because it's just a pouch, so you can just go top and bottom, And then you can just do exactly the same with the next layer, which is brown violet and German camo beige World War II at a 2:1 ratio. So making sure we've got more of that brown violet. And you can see that the green is starting to get quite a lot brighter. Brown violet's quite dark when we're talking greens. This heart or second layer definitely brightens that up a touch. And then finally, as you'd expect, I'll go with the 1:1 ratio. So a lot of this you might be thinking, my God, this is overkill. And it might be to you. If it's overkill, if I'm doing too much, you tailor this tutorial to what's going to work best for you. I'm somebody that likes to paint fewer models, but take my time. It probably is overkill as well, but I just think it works quite nicely. Then for the scarf, we use US dark green. Now we did paint the helmet in US dark green, but we've given that a dry brush, so we don't need to worry about that. We can just paint the scarf and anything else you want to paint. And then US dark green and German camo beige at a 2:1 ratio for the scarf, for the second layer, and then at a 1:1 ratio. If you're giving them elbow and knee pads, just follow this exact same principle. Just do a rectangle on the elbows and knees and follow the same paints that I used here and you'll be fine. That's exactly what I did with the pads. And then I use khaki for the webbing, following that same principle. Hopefully you can see that I'm leaving that dark khaki in the recesses of this backpack. And then I'm going to go ahead and start building up the colors everywhere else where I can do, where it's not in those recesses. Just going back to those elbow pads and knee pads that the guys just stitched on before the mission. These aren't actually sculpted on, so you just got to paint them on yourself. And then to highlight the khaki, I use khaki and stone grey at a 2:1 ratio. The method I always use is I call it the scratching method. I don't know what the correct term is. I'm no bloody expert when it comes to painting. I just paint and wing it most of the time. But I use what I call the scratching technique, and I just scratch all this detail in until I'm happy. Once I'm happy, I stop. I used to just try and paint it on and it would just be a big blob and it would always frustrate me because I'd always make mistakes. So scratch is the way to go in my opinion. And then finally I use khaki and stone grey at a 1:1 ratio. Now this is going to be quite bright, as you can see. It's more of a pale khaki colour, but that's perfect. Now we just want to pick out the detail, so you can add detail into the straps of the backpack. You can add detail into the outer edges of the backpack. You can make the backpack look full just by adding a bulge with a highlight colour, as if there's a bit of bag or extra material just poking out the top. This is what's really good with highlights. This is where you will differentiate how much equipment the backpack's got in it by highlighting it. And then for the boots and the helmet straps, I use saddle brown. Now, I didn't actually show you the helmet straps or the face painting prior to giving it a wash, purely because I've done face painting already, which you'll see later on towards the end of the video, and I like to paint the helmet straps after I've painted the face because I make a lot of mistakes. So I'm following the same technique. I'm painting the pistol holster and then I'm doing the same with the boots, because the boots actually have quite a bit of detail in them, believe it or not. And then for the next layer, I use saddle brown and German camo beige at a 2:1 ratio. Now you might not like this color for the helmet straps, which is fine. You go with what you want. I believe it was more of a red leather. That's why I've gone with it, but it does start to blend in with the flesh that I've go with, the flesh tones and stuff. So you might decide that this isn't for you, but that's fine. And then once you've done that, saddle brown and German camo beige at a 1:1 ratio for my final highlight. I don't do this on the boots. I only do it on the pistol holster and also the helmet, chin straps, etc. And then hopefully you'll have a bloke or a paratrooper that turns out like this. So I mentioned it before, I do have a 1/72 scale flesh guide already, so go and check that out if you want to know how I painted skin. So then there we go guys, that is it. These AB models are fantastic. They painted up an absolute treat. Hopefully you can see the guy on the very left is the one that was given a US field drab and a German camo beige World War II. He's just spinning around to the right now. opposed to Iraqi-san, you can just make out the difference. Iraqi-san just makes that uniform pop just a little bit more. A huge thank you goes out to Nick and the wonderful team at Eureka Miniatures for sending me out these samples. When I say samples, they sent me out the whole range, which is just absolutely fantastic, of US paratroopers. So thank you so much, Nick. You're a great supporter of the channel. Definitely check out their website and links in the description. Another huge thank you goes out to all of my patrons and YouTube channel members. Without you guys, these videos would not be possible. So I really hope you enjoyed this. Fantastic video for the lead up to D-Day. What would you like to see next? Let me know below. And until then, I will catch you at the next one. Thank you.